Welcome to the Dispense Magazine podcast with news and information about medical cannabis. We talk about the things you and your doctor might talk about. I'm your host, Sven Hosford. Today we'll visit the Mind, Body, Spirit Healing Expo in Monroeville, Pennsylvania. This was a great event with a cannabis pavilion filled with local dispensaries, certifying physicians, and medical cannabis-related products from Glass Gone Wow. Our panel discussion was with Dr. John Metcalf, a certifying physician and chief medical officer of Relief Specialists, Dr. Monika Juszczyk, a functional medicine doctor and certifying physician, and Mike Butler, pharmacist with the Healing Center. We had a lively audience and a great discussion about the integration of cannabis and holistic medicine. Here's how it sounded as we recorded live on October 6, 2018. So welcome everybody. This is a podcast for Dispense Magazine, and we have a distinguished panel here at the Mind, Body, Spirit Healing Expo in Monroeville, Pennsylvania. You probably saw there's a cannabis pavilion out front, so we have a couple of dispensaries and some of the certifying doctors, two of which are here with us today. My name is Sven Hosford, and I'll be your host for the next hour or so. We have Dr. Monika, pronounce your last name for me.
Juszczyk, which is Polish.
There's no vowels in her last name, I swear.
Just remember, from Roman Emperor Justus, stays for justice.
Justus.
Which was Emperor of Rome, which is justice.
Okay.
So, seriously.
She is a pioneering functional medicine physician, and she brings together nutrition, energy, movement, breathing, and much more. In the middle, we have Dr. John Metcalf. He's a medical director for Relief Specialists, and he is a pioneering expert on medical cannabis here in Western Pennsylvania. And we have on the end there Mike Butler, who's the very first, the pioneer medical cannabis pharmacist in Washington County. And he's the pharmacist for the Healing Center, now also open in Monroeville. So before we get started, it might be useful to know that I was publishing holistic health magazines for the last 25 years here in Pittsburgh. I used to do a magazine called Point of Light. It started in 1994. Some of you may remember that. I see a couple of heads going. Thank you. Then we tried one called the Journal of Lifestyle Medicine, which was also pretty popular. I've got a couple videos with 100,000 views on them. And then I was taken down by mold, and I became not able to work for a little while. And then when I came back, and you know how in America you always want to be whatever happened to you, you want to become the specialist in that, you know. And there was just no way I wanted to be the mold guy. Even people that have mold don't want to talk about mold. So I knew I didn't want to make a career out of mold. Well, along came medical cannabis, and I discovered that people are much more interested in cannabis than they are in eating broccoli and doing yoga, which I highly encourage you do that, but it's much more fun being in the cannabis industry. But as we're going to find out, there's a big crossover, and I'm really excited to be able to talk about this, how cannabis is actually a holistic medicine. It is a functional medicine. So with that, we're going to get some definitions. We'll start with Dr. Monika Juszczyk. Is that very close? Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's Monika.
Monika. Yeah. She is a functional medicine doctor. She specializes in functional cardiology. And she frequently consults with the very best specialists in progressive, integrative, and natural health experts from around the world. She is a rock star in her native Poland. I hear you opened for KISS, is that right?
Please.
Let's have a little fun. So we're lucky enough to have her here in the Pittsburgh area, and she regularly teaches classes on the type of medicine that she practices, and she sees patients in her Saxonburg office. And she's recently become a certifying physician for medical cannabis. Welcome, Dr. Monika.
Welcome, everybody.
Thank you. Yes, this is where you apply. So let's get some definitions. First, tell us, what is functional medicine?
Number one, I am honored to be here, to welcome all of you. All the way from Poland, I came to the United States believing that this is country of change, is country of melting pot, when diverse culture, diverse language, and diverse approach to medicine will create true health. I climbed up to what you will call top universities, when I'm climbed up, I strive to build internal and external endurance and stamina. I work with the best doctors and experts in so-called preventative cardiology and lipidology area. I work with professional athletes and with regular people of all walks of life to discover that tests that we do are not perfect, that people who are coming are imperfectly perfect example of beautifully functioning dynamic system. So what is functional medicine? Functional medicine is looking at function of human system at the cellular and systemic level. It will allow you to function well in diverse environment. Your master chip computer is your mind that is connected to your heart, that is connected to every cell of your body. Every cell of your body has membrane. This membrane has receptors, and they're looking up and down. They're your soldiers. Am I ready to take on this new battle, or am I ready to withdraw? So as a dynamic system, we have to stay in dynamic flow. So functional medicine is allowing you to condition your mind so it stays neutral when you get hit by challenges of a day. When I mean challenges from minute to minute, emotional, physical, spiritual. But this conditioning is not taking over old pattern which was programmed very often in utero, then through your parents, and then through modeling throughout all your culture. So you take on, and you become CEO of this good company, and you are a president who can give orders and your mastering system. We do very detailed testing, but I find out that testing of most detailed of the cellular level are not always explaining human health, that is vitality, that is a reverberation of a system. It means when you on, you on, when you off, you off. And it's not always showing inflammation of the cellular level. When people come very sick, for a long period of time, they function in hypo. It means lower metabolic state. You go to doctor, they tell you all is well, you have psycho problem. And I see these people. You go to home, your wife, your husband, your family, they don't understand. They don't understand your suffering, emotional sufferings. Shame, betrayal, abandonment, which are based on a person with whom I work, author of The Mind-Body Code, Mario Martinez, did extensive research and find that this conditioning will change immune system. What is immune system? Your fighters. It will lead to pattern of recognition, and your pattern will generate responses. So in order to change system, we bring basic. Basic is breath, breath of life. Close your nose. God is in front of you. Just keep it closed. Do you want God, or do you want next breath? You'll say, the hell with God. I want my breath. This is what I'm talking, taking holistic to realistic and mastering our mind, our heart, and our body. So you're driving this Ferrari, and it's working for you. This is in a nutshell, taking care of foundation, sugar, metabolic state, hormones, rhythmic state, cholesterol, but only in terms of inflammation, nutrients, cellular and systemic, and again, your mind. Stay in flow. In words of Bruce Lee, I practice martial arts, I practice Kriya Yoga, and it is not only, again, responses which we see in blood work, which are going to show you true health. So from all these words which I'm telling you, just remember, mind, breath, flow. People first, then test.
I love what you said there, holistic to realistic.
Can do it.
That's really, really a nice way to think about it. So I'm going to interpret a little bit about what I know about holistic, and you jump in and tell me if I'm on the right track here. I think that one of the principles of holistic and functional medicine, first and foremost, is that the individual, the patient, must take complete and total control for their health, be the captain of their own ship, as you put it. Would you say that's one of the most important things?
Yes, it is. But when people come sick, and I will give you an example. Yesterday I saw a gentleman in late 80s, very aware man, who used to dance. He's halfway bent. He's very lonely. He does not have a person to come to him. People will pray. Prayers are wonderful, but real help is needed. And person first who comes to doctor, who will be the future your life coach, needs to embrace first human loneliness. Person has to feel safe. So what do? Remember the power of human touch, which is removed from society and from our culture. Human touch is going to change expression of receptors in your skin. I'm going to talk about oxytocin, which is a very powerful hormone of love, which releases another neurotransmitters in our brain and causes pattern that is relaxed, trustworthy, to take person which comes to us to the journey of health. So what do I want to reiterate? Yes, person will take responsibilities, but not when it's in the middle of crisis and in jungle. When your blood pressure is 250, excuse me, I'm gonna use medications. When you in full-blown anxiety, I am not gonna talk about, please forgive me, marijuana at this place or CBD oil. I'm gonna bring it down, and I'm gonna bring it down fast. When you're throwing up, I'm gonna give you subcutaneous or sublingual or if needed, IV medications. Western medicine has its place, but then, beautiful tigers and tigresses, wake up. We are going to create real, what is called wow men. Why do I use wow? Based on ancient, not a belief system, but wisdom, which is known and have been known to India and other ancient culture for a long time. We have wow factor, which means the infinite. And we have man factor, which is in our cells, which creates material state. So women and men, which are expression of both, like yin and yang, have to be expressed in this system. Foundation, conditioning of your mind. So you take decision from neutral mind, body, supplements, everything else later. So what did I do with this gentleman? First we said, yes, I did hug him. Yes, we drink Kangen water, which has more than 40 years of experience and science in Japan, which is microcluster and has very fast delivery of system through cellular membrane. It's gonna calm his mind, remove neurotoxins from his connective tissues. We did prayers. Then I performed energy session, which is based on my training and meditation courses, which I completed. Then we discuss nutrition. We discuss the power of movement. And I will tell you what else. Man, this time, brought his recording, and he wanted to dance. I grabbed a man. I said, let's go, stand up. I deliver what I preach. This man in 80s was crying. I said, did I do something wrong? He told me, no, I used to be the one who was bringing women down. Everybody was looking at us. I said, we can do it. I gave him advice how he can relax connective tissues. Basically, hardball, show him how to stretch, because I modify everything to a customer, to ultimate performer seeker. It's how I call you guys, ultimate performer seekers. You are not a patient. What is patient? I don't want you to own your diagnosis. I want you to master health and vitality. So after that, I received a message from him. He said, Dr. Monika, I dance for 2.5 hours. I want to have more session with you. Will you dance with me? I said, it's an honor. Why do I cite you this real story? And I'm going to cite you another one, which was on the way here. I have people after motor vehicle accident who were told, and I'm going to literally say the truth, they would never have orgasm. And I'm openly can talk about libido as the power which brings life. Without it, you would not be here. Without your mom and dad coming together, you would not have life. This power of libido has certain vibration, which is brought to human heart and human mind. So this man was told that he would never walk, he would never have orgasm, he would never work out, you name it. He's my hero. He could not come today because he works out with personal trainer. I asked him today while I was driving, what did you do and when did you do it? He started working on his lower back because he has elevated insulin level. I measure markers of inflammation and insulin dysregulation. It's basically sugar, but sugar could be normal. Doctor will tell you, all is well. No, not always well. I see president of companies, I see athletes, I see people who qualify for Olympics, and I take care of martial arts people. When there's oxidative stress and there's chronic inflammation, this man is working out quite a bit, you will have high cortisol level and high insulin level. And he has trouble of losing weight. Why? Because he's not somebody who will be running. He cannot walk. We generated program which helps him. And he works with personal trainer. I hope that in the future you will meet him. It is a man in 70s, absolutely amazing, qualify also for Olympics. He helps people to restructure the conditioning of our neuromuscular plane. And I saw what he was able to do with him. Also, as a result, men started searching the way he can actually have orgasm. And I was challenged. And I take challenge. Why? Because if you don't take challenge, you don't grow. You have to be creative in life, and you have to say yes to the opportunities. So he started introducing me to hormones that he's using. He was mentioning equipment that he was using. Then being in New York City, when I trained Wing Chun with Grandmaster Sifu Alan Goldberg, I was again challenged by martial arts people, and I saw quite amazing things to go deeper with it. What I started noticing, these men were very open-minded, and they share with me very significant information which I deliver in form of a seminar, which was, the title was Testosterone Not Only for Hungry Warriors, Heart Health Beyond Libido. It just basically took me to another level. Men basically is doing very well, and I see the same wonderful responses with women. Your question is probably, why do we talk about it? Why men constantly think about sex, and why women just want to talk about baking and shopping and doing other things? Doesn't he loves me? Doesn't she loves me? Why she doesn't want this stuff? Because brain area of men is occupied, it's a larger space, which is occupied by sexual energy. Women operate differently. And coming back to basics, if you're in pain, if you feel lonely, guess what? Foundation first, people first, then all other stuff. That's how I take care of business.
Okay. Yep. Never expect a short answer from Dr. Monika.
I love what I do.
One thing I heard you say, though, is that open mind. The martial arts people have an open mind. And I would say that's another one of the hallmarks of holistic and functional medicine. I have to ask you to keep this short answer. Is that...
Please, you tell me time out.
Okay.
And guys, you tell me also if you get bored. Because if I'm boring you, like I ask Sven to first ask you, what are your questions? The best is to jot it down, one question, and we make sure that we answer.
Yeah, we'll try to get to as many questions as we can.
Oh.
So let me go on to introduce our next panelist, Dr. John Metcalf. This is about, the third or fourth podcast I think we've done together. You're always teaching new and interesting things. He's a rock star right here in Western Pennsylvania. He opened for Sticks. He's a retired internal medicine and functional medicine physician, and he now has turned his attention and his formidable intellect to medical cannabis. He is now a certifying physician, and he's helped hundreds of patients get access and real relief, and he is now the medical director of Relief Specialists. Dr. Metcalf, glad to have you here.
Thanks, Wen. I appreciate inviting me out today. It's a real honor to be able to speak and educate people because this journey, we all have this health journey, and I think it's important to start becoming knowledgeable, become educated, so that you can make choices and decisions. And I think that's really where it starts.
So how did cannabis, if it's such a good, healthy plant for you, how did it get such a bad reputation and a stigma, and particularly among people who really should know better and who do care? Well,
that's a very interesting question. Documentation, we have documented medical cannabis in cultures from Egypt to Somalia over 5,000 years. And in 1839, William Shaughnessy, a general surgeon, went over to India and saw the healing properties of marijuana and brought it back to the Western culture. And for 100 years, from 1840 to 1940, the AMA and all these pharmaceutical companies were behind it 100%. In fact, William Osler, the founder of modern medicine, he felt that cannabis was the most potent medicine that he's ever used for headaches, migraine headaches. So what happened was that the political culture changed. All of a sudden, you can't patent a plant-based medicine. So all of a sudden, in 1940, it was taken off the pharmacopoeia. It was made only by prescription only. In 1952, it was made a narcotic, and in 1970, the federal government made THC a Schedule I drug, which is illegal across the state. In December of 2016, they made CBD from cannabis also a Schedule I drug. So they say that it was politics, because if you look at PubMed, a search engine for medical literature, there's over 28,000 studies on marijuana, 4,000 on medical marijuana. So there's a lot of interesting research, but as long as the federal government has it as a Schedule I drug, then pharmaceutical companies and research people are not going to do studies on it very much because you can't patent it. You can't patent it, you can't make money. But you can tell things are changing because right now we currently have 30 independent state medical boards that have approved medical marijuana. So the tide is changing. I personally think that the federal government's going to change over the next year or two, as they recently have just approved the first plant-based CBD isolate product called Epidiolex for childhood seizure disorders, which should be available toward the end of this year.
That's great. So the thing that drives most doctors crazy is when you ask them about the endocannabinoid system. Can you give us a little brief outline and why doctors should know more about that? Sure.
Well, currently, just to let you know, there's only one medical school in the nation that teaches the endocannabinoid system. That's Brown University. 13% of medical schools teach a mini course on cannabinoids and also on cannabis, which is a far cry from what it should be. Endocannabinoid system was discovered in the early 1990s by a Raphael McCollum. He's a researcher over at the Hebrew University in Israel. When he was studying the phytocannabinoids like THC and CBD, he discovered the endocannabinoid system. And without going into a great deal of biochemistry or physiology, how this basically works is this. Let's suppose somebody develops the flu. What does the body do? The body starts to initiate reactions within the cell structures in order to try to combat that. For instance, it'll start to have your mucous membrane starts secreting a lot of saliva in order to shed some of these viruses and bacteria. It also raises the temperature in the body in order to kill the bacteria or viruses. And it also, the body develops fatigue so that you can take the time to heal. And all of this is regulated by the endocannabinoid system. The endocannabinoid system is the master regulator of all the systems in your body, including your immune system, your nervous system, your endocrine system. Just the other day, I had a discussion with one of the professors at the University of Pittsburgh Medical School. He was a professor of immunology. He had heard about the endocannabinoid system, but had no clue of what it did, which is really amazing to me because truly, if your body is out of sync, and that's what chronic disease is all about, brought on by stress, brought on by cortisol and changes in the body, then what happens is you get sick. And the reason you get sick is because your system is not in balance. And unless you bring the body back into balance, then it doesn't change. Taking chemotherapy or radiation therapy for cancer or taking a pill for an ill really doesn't change the fact because all you're doing is treating one molecule for one disease. Unfortunately, it changes your body in other ways, and that's why you develop side effects. And that's why it's so important to look at the body holistically rather than just by symptoms, which unfortunately modern medicine does.
You've been a functional medicine doctor, and you once described it as rather than just treating the symptoms, you're going after the cause. You're going upriver, as you say, after the cause. Is cannabis kind of the ultimate upriver plant?
Well, I have to say this. I retired about a year ago, and I spent the last year researching this because I wasn't quite sure exactly what cannabis was all about, except I started treating hyperkinetic or autistic kids with some CBD under their tongue, and it calmed them down. So I knew that there was a lot more to it. And as I became more involved with the research, I was amazed at how much there is available. And when I talk to physicians, they haven't a clue what I'm talking about. Because they're so specialized that unfortunately this is what they know, and they don't go beyond those boundaries. So I think that cannabis is very important as far as regulating the endocannabinoid system because it comes dysregulated by the lifestyles that we live, the toxins we're exposed to, the foods that we eat, the lifestyles, the lack of energy, the lack of exercises. So I think that cannabis is a very important part of that. But to get down to the root of things, you also have to make lifestyle changes. You have to exercise, you have to meditate, you have to fast, you have to eat the proper foods, you have to take the proper supplements, you have to do the proper testing, and you have to get regenerative sleep, because if you don't sleep, your body doesn't heal itself. So you have to look at the body and treat all aspects of that, and that's what makes unique about the cannabis plant, is that there's over 700 compounds in there. And each one of these comes into your system, and they modulate different parts of different cell receptors and tell them what to do so they all kind of work in sync. And that's what we call the entourage effect. Instead of just one single molecule, like for instance, you have reflux, they'll give you something like Zantac. That blocks the acid, but the question is, why did you have that problem in the first place? And unless you really address that, all you're doing is treating. One of the things that really bothers me is people that have autoimmune disorders, they give you these biologics that suppress your immune system. When you suppress your immune system, what happens? You get sick, you get real sick. And when it comes on, unfortunately, the damage has been done. So I have kind of I'm really against that. I have moral issues about that. And I think that people, by educating them, telling them about lifestyle changes, telling them about holistic care, then you can take your own journey to whatever level that you want. Because this is your body, this is your life. We're here to help educate you and not just to say, here's a pill for an ill. Thank you.
So, I like what you said, dysregulated. Our endocannabinoid system is dysregulated. And you have used the term cannabinoid deficiency. Can you explain what that is and what kinds of conditions are thought to be caused by that?
Well, there's something called clinical endocannabinoid deficiency. This was coined by an international researcher and neurologist by the name of Ethan Russo. He coined this term in 2001, had an update in 2004, and had an update in 2016. And what he found is that as people depending upon their genetic structures, the environment, is that the endocannabinoid system becomes dysregulated. And then because of stress, because of inflammation, and then people start to get sick. And then when you get sick, you go to the doctor, they give you a pill, but you're not really addressing why you got sick in the first place. So endocannabinoid deficiency has been shown, especially the latest article in 2016 review, especially for 3 specific types of conditions: migraine, fibromyalgia, and irritable bowel syndrome. But since 2001, they've added a lot more other symptoms like PTSD, schizophrenia, Huntington's, all sorts of neurodegenerative like Parkinson, Alzheimer's, because what they found is that people develop these diseases because the body is dysregulated. Your immune system is not functioning properly. And if it's not functioning properly, then you're going to develop a symptom. And if you treat the symptom, the problem is you're not getting to the cause. So you have to look at the whole human being. When people come in to get certified by me, I try to take some time to educate them, because my responsibility as a physician is to educate you and not to give you another pill. And unfortunately, people come to see us usually at the end stage of their life. They've already been through the medical treadmill. I think there should be more of an emphasis on health and preventative health care, and that really, truly is the focus of bringing people back into balance in our society.
Brilliant. Brilliant. All right, let's talk to our third pioneer here, another rock star, the very first medical cannabis pharmacist in Washington County. Who did you open for? Sorry. Mike went, I like this story. Mike went back to school at age 30 to become a pharmacist, and he's worked in West Virginia and has extensive specialization in medication-assisted treatment for addiction. I think they call that MAT, is that right? And he is, as I said, now the lead pharmacist for the Healing Center in Washington, and there's another one that just opened up over here in Monroeville. So welcome, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So you're right where the rubber hits the road. Let's talk about what you see on a day-to-day basis. And first, we've had this whole conversation about holistic medicine, functional medicine. Is there ways in which you incorporate some of these philosophies into how you practice?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the fundamental topics that we've talked about is helping patients take control of their own health. I think both doctors talked about that, and that's one thing that we do. Every patient that comes in that has not been to a dispensary before, on their first time, we at the Healing Center request that they sit down with one of our medical professionals, pharmacist, a PA, a nurse practitioner. And one of the things that we stress is that unlike traditional medicine, when generally we would say, so take this drug, take this many milligrams, this many times a day for this many days, and this is what's going to happen. And as the patient, you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to go home and look it up. You don't have to talk to your friends and family about what their experience was with that medicine. The doctor said to take it, so you go home and take it. That is not the approach that we like to take. We tell everyone that this is very different and that you are the one that is in control of your dose. The doctor did not write you a prescription for this. This is not the doctor's order. This is not a prescription. We give them guidance on how to start at a very low dose and very slowly come up into what we call the therapeutic range, where you see a response, at which point it's their responsibility to evaluate that as a positive or a negative response. So the number one thing that we do is we try to enforce the idea that you are taking a big step towards overseeing your own health care. And that really is one of the fundamentals of the holistic approach to medicine.
And do you find that some people are resistant to taking on this responsibility?
Yes, there are a number of people that are. So we get caught up in our routines, and as Dr. Metcalf was saying, you have a condition, you go to the doctor, you get a pill for it, and it works for a little while, but eventually, say it's the acid, the acid reducing pill. Eventually, what your body's going to do to counter that is increase the stomach lining's ability to create more acid. So you run out of your Zantac, you don't pick it up one day, and the next day you've got terrible indigestion and your bowels get upset, so you go back to the doctor and you get something else. And as a retail pharmacist, you get to know patients. And over time, the trend that I saw a lot was I would meet somebody and they would have 6 or 7 different medications. And in 6 months, they'd be up to 10 or 12. And then after a year, they'd be pushing 15. And 2 years later, now they're taking 18 pills a day. And although traditional medicine has a way to look at that drug profile, and just because we can individually justify the presence of any one of those chemical moieties in this drug profile, doesn't mean that when we stand back and look at the entire forest, that we can discount the fact that overall quality of life is decreasing with the addition of all of these things. So our holistic approach is to kind of break out of that. Every time you go to the doctor, you get another pill and you just take it for the rest of your life. And whatever, if it makes you feel worse, we'll give you another pill for that side effect. We're really breaking away from that, and using medical marijuana as an agent is taking us leaps and bounds towards our goal.
Well, some people might not know that in Pennsylvania, every dispensary has to have a pharmacist on staff every hour that they're open. Is that right?
That is true, but there is no legislative nor regulatory requirement for every new patient to actually sit down and speak with that pharmacist.
Okay. But the service that you provide, as you said, the pharmacist seems like they get to know the patients better than the doctors, especially if you're going to several different doctors and getting several different medications, but you're right there dealing with them on a regular basis.
Yes.
And that's kind of how it works in the dispensary as well, right? You're always there to help answer questions and so forth.
Very much so. We make ourselves available all the time, and we really like to follow up. We get people that are looking for something. The number of people that I know that have stopped taking opiates, benzodiazepines, Ambien for sleep, Suboxone, and other addiction treatment medicines, it's astounding. It's been amazing. I knew coming into this I was always an advocate of medical marijuana, but I had no idea just how powerful this drug really is. In fact, not too long ago, I was speaking to a group of pharmacists in West Virginia, and one of them asked me, he said, we have always been against this, so how am I going to turn around now and tell someone, if I have been against marijuana as a drug of abuse for years and years and years, how do I flip-flop now and start talking to someone about how this is something that can help them? And I told him, I said, the first thing you need to understand is that just like the rest of us, everything that you've been taught in your life up until now about marijuana is simply wrong.
So what then are some of the most surprising results you've seen from medical cannabis?
Some of the best, and I just can't count the times that people have come in. 65% of our patients, which was kind of surprised me, are over the age of 50. So our demographic is much older than I had any anticipation of. So we have a lot of older couples, retired couples that come in. I have so many wives come in and say, I have my husband back after just a few weeks of therapy. And husbands saying after a few weeks of therapy that we haven't gone on a vacation for 7 years because my wife is not functional enough to go. We just booked a flight, or we just booked a trip. We're going on vacation again. This changed our life. One of the most stark things that happened was a lady brought me to tears with her, telling me about her 7-year-old autistic son who was nonverbal. 2 weeks after she started him on medical marijuana therapy, she told her husband in the kitchen, watch out so he doesn't hurt himself on that chair. And that little boy looked at her and said, chair, 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 and said it over and over. She said, now he follows me around the house like an echo in my ear. After 7 years, she never heard her son say a word. 2 weeks it took. That's a powerful thing.
Wow. Do you see signs that the stigma is lessening among some of the traditional medical community?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I see that in leaps and bounds. We're growing in our consciousness. We're growing in our acceptance. And as a society, we are definitely moving forward in medical marijuana. And we're educating other professionals on it as well. And when I talk to other healthcare professionals, I see very little resistance, some resistance, but mostly I see curiosity and a willingness to learn what this is and what have I been missing. Because in our hearts, if you are a medical professional, you are a scientist at your base. And therefore, you want to know.
Do you find that when doctors understand the endocannabinoid system, that's kind of like the tipping point, and now the skepticism falls away and now they understand the science?
Very much. The endocannabinoid system is the key, especially for doctors and pharmacists. It's not enough to tell a doctor, well, CBD will help seizures in children. We want to know why. Mechanistically, we want to know what is the molecule, where does it bind, how does it have activity at the synapse between the neurons to cause what it does. So once we begin to understand the mechanism, then we can wrap our scientific minds around it. Great. And the research has really shed so much light on that.
Super. All right, we've got a microphone. If anybody would like to ask any questions, anybody have anything they would like to ask both of our doctors or our pharmacists? Right here.
Thank you for your information. We have two sons, and they both have primary immune deficiency, Brutons, for which they take IVIG therapy on a regular basis. They've also developed Crohn's disease, residual to that. Both of them had 75% of their small bowel removed, and they're taking biologics, each of them. Would there be any help from trying to regulate, at this point, their endocannabinoid system?
Who wants to take that? Dr.
Or any
Metcalf?
research that
Sure.
might lend itself?
I mean, that's an excellent question. You know, because the federal government has made this a Schedule 1, research is kind of sketchy concerning giving you hard data facts. But if you look at the fact is that the endocannabinoid system modulates the immune system, and your immune system is not functioning, as evidenced by Humira, inflammatory bowel disease, then there's every reason to suspect the fact is that if you can bring it back into balance, then perhaps you can start to wean some of these medications off. How much? Nobody really knows. It's a trial and error. I've seen some amazing results, and because I've seen these results, it's really changed the way I see the world. You know, for instance, I had an opportunity to go to this woman's house who had stage 4 ovarian cancer, and she was completely zonked out on opiates. She wasn't able to communicate with her family. So we expedited her getting medical marijuana. In the last 4 days of her life, she was able to communicate to her family. So that was quite a gift.
Anybody else?
There are like a number of different kinds of marijuana. Does this dispensary explain that, the differences to people?
Yes, absolutely. And I can kind of explain it now. The primary breakdown that we have is indica versus sativa. The big difference we think of as indica is indicouch, whereas sativa is thought of more uplifting. So we kind of lean a little more towards indicas for evening dosing to decrease pain and help you to get a better night's sleep. And we lean a little more towards sativas during the day. Now, a lot of people think of sativas as uplifting and perhaps to give you energy. I have a little bit of issue with that because the underlying molecule is still tetrahydrocannabinol, and one of the primary side effects is, an overall depression of central nervous system function. So they all will kind of make you a little tired, but many people experience an increase in focus and an increase in energy with the sativas versus indicas. So our primary breakdown would be, when are you planning on using this, and what is your overall goal? And then another factor we would bring into is, what is your experience, or what is your willingness to accept the bit of psychological activity that THC has, because that does not have to be present to get clinical benefit. There are ways to mitigate the psychological activity of the THC for during the daytime dose, and then allow that to be a little bit more of a factor in the evening. So the biggest breakdown is indica versus sativa, daytime versus night. And then we go from there.
Can you explain a little bit more about THC versus CBD? I know a lot of people there's several places out here that sell CBDs.
Yeah, absolutely. The THC is the tetrahydrocannabinol, which is the psychoactive component of the marijuana plant. And it also, we find, is much more effective for pain control. Whereas CBD is another cannabinoid. It's called cannabidiol. And it is what is most effective for neuropathic issues, inflammation. And it seems to be much more neuroprotective. They do not function the same way. They have very different mechanism of action at the synapse. Whereas THC binds directly to cannabinoid receptors, CBD does not bind directly to those receptors. It actually affects how the receptors bind to their own substrates. It's what's called a modulator. So again, we would stratify each patient according to what have you been diagnosed for, what are your symptoms, and what are your goals of treatment. And then we talk to you about what is your experience level. And then we kind of use either something that's higher in THC or something that would be higher in CBD, depending on what your needs are.
Monica, do you have something to add to that?
I just wanted to add, because nobody touched upon vascular responses and inflammatory responses. We do have CB1 and CB2 receptors. They are present not only in our neurological system, they are present in vascular wall, they are present in our gut, and they are present in almost every cell on our body. As a result, we are going to see decreased cellular inflammation. When inflammation is down, you experience what we call life. What are markers of inflammation? One of them known to functional medicine doctors is HSCRP. I'm always going to give you practical advice because I'm taking to the grant everything. So remember, ask to have checked HSCRP. HSCRP comprises of interleukin-1, interleukin-1 beta, and TNF alpha. These responses, which are affected by activating endocannabinoid system, are going to decrease inflammatory markers. In addition, what I have observed in patients who use CBD for now, I cannot speak yet from a practical standpoint about medical marijuana, and I bow to those who are masters to me, and I'm always taking into practice. So mastery remembers what we experience. So for now, what I observe with CBD oils, number one, relaxation of the mind, decrease in a positive way blood pressure, better sleep, less neuromuscular pain, decrease in anxiety. This elderly gentleman, if you remember the story which I mentioned to you, he actually is on CBD oil. He's on tincture. So there are different delivery methods. I started changing majority of my patients to a liquid form. And why? Even if there is lower amount of active component of CBD oil, when body and mind are in chaotic, disorganized, functional way, delivery of active substance and cross-membrane will be decreased. And a lot of people have sick and leaky gut, leaky brain, and leaky emotional state. I'm just joking. You basically in mental diarrhea. I'm going to just joke. So even if dose was just lower, because gentleman, another one which I mentioned to you, I was on the phone with him today. I put him on capsules which are per se more potent. And then I have athletes, gym owner, who I also put on more potent. Why? Because we choose to destroy our body. Why? Because it's our job. Like, for example, president will be flying from place to place when it's continuous need to change rhythmic responses of our hormones. If you don't deliver a dose which is needed, body will be continuously functioning inflammatory state. So gym owners, I put on gel caps, higher dose, and I've been dosing more often. Do I have protocol? People are not protocols. People are persons, each individual with very unique responses. And why I'm tapering them off other medications, I teach them about mindfulness on the go, so you master stuff. I teach them about diet, which will allow you to create food which has highest, which will increase vibrance of a system. And finally, we introduce movements. So I don't want to be misunderstood that medical marijuana or CBD oils, which is now, do I believe it? It's not a belief system. I am scientist. Science of health is science of self. But in order to take it to another road, we need to understand system. But remember, it is not going to be solution to all problems. So I always bow to each of you, and I learn, and I continuously have to surrender. There's a story about wise man. He was so wise that king wanted to hire him. because everybody pay him for wise advice. He said, I will give you room, just give me advice. Okay, but on the one condition, you and close to you advisors are not allowed to come to this room. So, okay, everybody started wondering, what is he doing there? Every day for 1 hour, Wiseman was sitting in the room. So people were thinking, what he's doing, maybe he's stealing from you. Curiosity and all different advisors close to you will be telling you what is right, what is wrong for you. Finally, they broke in the room, and what did they find? Empty room, and men all drugs. What he said, what are you doing here? Well, every day, when I take off these fancy clothes, I put my beggar clothes, my beggar bow, to remind me who I am. So what you see here, even if you see me in these dresses, this is not who I am. Those who come to me, they will meet a real person. I'm in my jeans, I'm in my sneakers. I'm cooking, I'm hiking, I'm walking, I'm meditating. And it's what I teach people, because you become heroes. And I learn from all and each of you, grassroots movement is going to take things to much higher level. Doctors or people become very programmed. And if we don't change the way we do things, things would not change. So it was wonderful what you noticed about doctors and what you're telling me. What do I tell people who were taught that marijuana is bad? Let's go and ask ourselves, what is bad, what is good? When gangsters are running on the street and mom is taking drugs, and there is no presence of the father when family is broken, and a little kid is trying to survive, is it bad or is it wrong? I work in Connecticut when it's a large number of underserved area. We cannot just say the truth has only one light. There's a lot of shadow between. So why are you conditioning and changing who you are? Remember, you are in charge of your system. This system is a mobile system. Take this finger off. Okay, we can talk about your finger. Is finger alive? No. Everything together. Holistic. Realistic.
Yeah.
People are not protocols. Thank you, Doc.
Yeah, I wanted to actually emphasize that
And
point
you
a little
matter.
bit. That this is another thing I think where cannabis is truly demonstrating itself to be a holistic functional medicine is that because of the number of terpenes and cannabinoids, as you said, Dr. Metcalf, there's so many different healing components, and you just described a little bit about sativa versus indica, but there's all those other terpenes in there, and they all have that entourage effect. Each person is going to respond differently, even with the same condition. Is that what you're seeing in the pharmacy? Mike?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Everybody's completely different.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and it's really kind of an experimentation process, and we're there to help interpret the results primarily. So we start very conservatively, and then we want feedback. We interpret those results, and then together we make, the first question we have to answer is this appropriate therapy for you? And if that answer is yes, it does seem to be that we're getting benefit without reaching side effects, then do we change the dose? Do we increase the dose? Do we change to something else? And so those decisions are based on initial information.
Great.
So very slowly we proceed, and it works very, very well. I've been absolutely amazed.
Well, we're just about at an hour, and I want to let everybody know that the room is going to be available, and our three professionals will be here to answer any personal questions if you want to come up and ask. But I would ask if there's any last, I'll ask from each of you, if there's any last point you want to make about cannabis and holistic health. We miss anything?
Very ubiquitous new system that we have to master and approach with, again, neutral response. Give it a chance. Don't be overreactive. Give it a chance to work with wonderful experts and pharmacists who have a lot of experience. Enduring change. Build your inner endurance and stamina, which will allow you to master your mind, master your body. Remember, science of health, science of self. It's what I can tell now, and I'm honored just basically to be here. I thank you all. I will be certifying new patients because whatever I said day ago, 1 hour ago, is past, and we are always becoming. Remember, goal is to become, and when it ends, with your last breath, no shortcuts.
True. We're always becoming. Dr. Metcalf, any last points?
Yeah, again, it was a real pleasure being here today and answering some of your questions. I think the most important thing as a patient or as a human being is to become educated. Your responsibility is to find what works for you. Because in this system, this toxic world that we live in, you know, it's kind of sad when people come in to see me and all of a sudden they've been sick for many, many years. If they'd just been a little bit more proactive, and maybe their own physicians had spent a little bit more time in preventative health care, then perhaps we wouldn't be in the state that we are right now. So I encourage all of you to become educated. A lot of these dispensaries have free educational courses. We give educational courses as well, because I think an educated patient is a patient that can take their health in their own hands and make decisions, because then you can grow, you can adapt, and you can find balance in your life. Thank you.
That's definitely one thing that they cross over. Yep. And Mike, any last thoughts?
Yeah, just one thing I'd like to add. If any of you in this room today have a family member, friend, loved one that is struggling with opiate addiction, please talk to them about medical marijuana. I have been on the front lines of the opiate epidemic for years. Right now, our current treatment is replacement therapy. We replace an opiate with another opiate. Medical marijuana is a better, more effective treatment. I know this completely. I know it from experience. I know it from physiology. I know it from my education. And please be open with them and talk to them about how much this drug can help. There is no other drug on the market that can combat the withdrawal symptoms from opiates better than medical marijuana. There is no better agent that I know of. So talk to them about it if you are in that situation.
Excellent. Thank you. I just want to say one last thing, that I've been so excited about this topic, the integration of cannabis and holistic health, because it really is such a crossover. There's so many different things that we've talked about. The one thing I want to point out is that the cannabis community and the holistic community, the healers, have the biggest hearts ever that I've ever seen in any medical communities. This is the heartfelt group. Both of these groups just have people that go way out of their way, do amazing things. I've gotten to know Dr. Metcalf really well. He's just an amazing person. I've known Dr. Monika for a while. Again, astonishing, big hearts. I've only met Mike today, but I'm sure I've heard lots of good things about him. That's actually why he's here. I had clients come to me and say, hey, you got to get this guy. So I want to have one more round of applause for our big-hearted panel. And thank you for being here at the Mind, Body, Spirit Healing Expo. That concludes our visit to Monroeville and this episode of the Dispense Magazine podcast. Tune in again next time for more news, information, and discussion about medical cannabis for you and your doctor. Thanks for listening. This podcast is a production of Mindful Medicine, LLC.